Okay. The Volunteer Examiner Program. Apparently, years ago, the FCC conducted all of the license exams, and you had to go to your local FCC office to take a test. And then somebody got smart and decided to delegate that. So they came up with the uh, group of VEX, the Volunteer Examiner Coordinators, who basically coordinate the question pools and the exams, and there's small groups. There's 14 VEX, and each of them have smaller groups that do license exams. We have a bunch here in the county. Um, PCARS, well, is involved with Laurel and ARL for doing exams. The Kennedy Space Center Club does ARL exams. Uh, Somebody up in Titusville, I think, is doing some and exams, and what's his name? Zimmerman
Uh, well, Zimmerman's in Cocoa.
with
And
Laurel,
Mills.
right?
What's that?
He's Laurel, right?
Yeah. And then Ricky DeLuca in Mims is ARRL.
So, I guess it went back to the 1980s when you didn't have to go to the FCC office anymore.
Just novices.
Say what?
I think the novice lessons we had volunteers in that.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. Um, but anyway, now, it's done by the VEX, and there's, like I said, there's 14 around the country. Um, I assume ARL and Laurel are probably the biggest ones, although you see a lot of, what is it, 5YI or something like
I
that.
can't remember the full one, but there's a couple of them that.
There's a
and they
lot
seem
out
like-
west in
Okay.
California and
I
those
got my
areas.
initial license in '57, technician, and then the conditional class from the examiner in Ocala, not FCC.
Oh, okay.
So there was provision for technician and conditional, the alternative to general, back that far for sure.
Okay. But basically, the VEX are responsible for coordinating all the license examinations around the country in the U.S. So the only place the FCC is involved now is taking your money and giving you a call sign,
Processing.
putting you in the database. Yeah. Um, the VEX maintain the question pools. So they get together. There's a thing called the NVEC, which is the National VEC Association. I think, as I understand it, they have a representative or so from each of the 14 VECs, and they coordinate the question pools. Um, they also do accreditation for the VEs. So in order to become a VE, you have to fill out an application and pass a written test of 20 or 25 questions uh, before they'll certify you. And you have to say you were never a convicted felon and you don't do drugs and things like that. Supposed to prove you're a reputable person. Let's see. Yeah, I guess the last one there, part of the thing is assure that every examinee is qualified under the rules. Without regard to race, sex, religion, origin, membership, and all that kind of stuff. So you don't have to be an ARL member to go do an ARL exam. Likewise, you don't have to be an ARL or an ARRL member to be a certified ARL VE. So what is a volunteer examiner coordinator? So, Charlie? Some of the big, we mentioned ARL and Laurel, W5YI. There's a few people around here that have that certification. I'm not familiar with ARC and Gears. There is a CVEC, CAVEC, Central Alabama VEC. It's up in around Huntsville. They do a lot. They do mostly online.
Application for the test and had the name of the organization wasn't there. I can't remember who it was.
Oh, well, there's 14. I don't know.
Yeah, something.
So to become a VE, you have to be accredited by one of the VECs. You can have accreditation for more than one VEC. And usually if you have one, you can just, give them a copy of your accreditation and they just sort of rubber stamp it. As far as I know, the ARL one is the only one you have to take the test, the open book test. You have to be at least 18 years of age. I'm not exactly sure why that is, because you can be licensed at, I don't know, is there an age limit for a license?
I don't think there is, I think you can
I know we have some
take the test and pass it.
some kids around the county that are 10 and 12 licensed. You have to be a minimum of a general class.
And while it says you have to be a general class member, you're more usable if you are an extra.
Right.
Because, as a general, you can only administer tests to technician candidates.
Right. And I believe an advanced can do technician. We don't have of any advanced VEs we have.
I haven't met any personally.
During an exam, it's required to have at least 3 VEs to monitor the exam and grade the examination. In order to be a VE, you have to, I guess, meet all those things where you meet whatever their statutory qualifications are. You have to agree that it's a voluntary position, you don't get paid. The liaison groups that actually perform the exams can keep part of the examination fee to cover the cost of giving the exam, like maybe paper, stamps, things like that, because you used to have to mail the results back to the VEC. So you had to pay for postage. So they put that in so, it would cover the cost of postage and envelope and stuff like that. And the cost varies. ARL is $15. Laurel is free. Central Alabama is $5. I don't know about the others, but they can vary. I don't think anybody is more than 15. And there may be a limit by the FCC. Not sure. And you have to have integrity and be honest, or you can't get approved. How they know that from the exam, I don't know. So what is required to be accredited as a volunteer examiner? Volunteer examiners are accredited by what organization? Charlie? Which of the following criteria must be met for a non-US citizen to be an accredited volunteer examiner? Just have to be a general or above. You don't have to be a citizen. You don't have to belong to the ARL or anybody. What's the minimum age one must be to qualify? Okay, parent exam. Well, there's three, used to be four. Technician was element one. I mean, novice was element one. Technician is element two. General is three. Amateur is, or class, yeah, extra is four. They no longer give novice licenses, although apparently there's some people that still hold them. You can get it renewed. The element two has 35 questions on the exam. There's a question pool of 400 plus questions divided into 35 groups. So you get one question per group. The same is true for the general. It's about the same number of questions in the pool. I think it's 422, more or less. The extra is 50 questions. There's 600 plus questions in the pool. And there's 50 groups, so you still get one question per group. The passing score for all of them is 74%. So for technician in general, you can miss 9. For extra, you can miss 13. The VEs, usually it's the VE liaison, kind of runs the local exam group, does the instructions for the exam for the candidates, you know, about not writing on the exam book and not having notes, and, you know, make sure your calculator is zeroed out, nothing stored on it.
So this one, you can bring your calculator, to the Laurel, as the technician general. We were told, we'll provide the calculator and give out.
It depends on the group. For Laurel, Gary has a bunch of calculators, so if you don't have one, they'll lend you one. I forgot mine and used a lender and couldn't operate it.
But they were scientific, that's what I'm wondering how.
Well, yeah, but it works, they don't all work the same.
Is that still the case? But yeah, the ones Gary, they gave you, which is basic, they are, you know, you can still.
I don't know any of them that will let you use your cell phone calculator, though.
Yeah, no, they couldn't, they had their.
It's too easy to cheat. Yeah. But, you know, most scientific calculators are okay to use, as long as you can show that you've not been a stored, you know, that TI one that they recommend is, I mean, about $13, $14. It does everything you need. doesn't store stuff.
Yeah, I got you. Just. We'll provide that.
Can't bring books, can't bring notes. But you can write notes on the back of the answer sheet.
Yeah.
Or if you bring a blank piece of paper, but you have to turn it in with your exam.
Usually
Does-
use it also in the phone for-
Right. Yeah. Especially for technician, we always tell them to draw the pie chart.
Yeah.
Like I said, requires a minimum of 3 VEs. Uh, they're there to watch you while you're taking the exam, so you're not copying or doing something you're not supposed to. In most cases, if you have to leave the exam room, you have to turn in the exam, whether you're finished or not. So it's advisable to go to the bathroom before you start.
Right. Make sure you go in there before you get stuff.
And like Dan said, only general can only administer technician class. And I don't know that we have any general VEs in any of the groups that I deal with. What license examinations may you administer with an accredited VE holding a general class operator license? Who must observe the administration of a technician class license examination? Alpha. Like I said, the VEs are supposed to observe the examinee. If the examinee does something that he or she's not supposed to, we're supposed to terminate his exam. I don't know if they get credit for how much they got done or not. It doesn't go that far. I've never seen that happen.
Maybe it's happening, just haven't seen.
Well, also VEs can be in trouble for taking bribes. Although I'm not sure, because you'd have to bribe all three.
That's kind of like. You might follow.
Yeah. And well, it's on another slide. You're not allowed to give an exam to a relative. However, you can give an exam to your boss or your employees. I would think that would.
That's amazing.
Who is responsible for the proper conduct and necessary supervision during an amateur operator license examination session? Like I said, you can't do a relative, and they really spell them out. Even stepchildren doesn't have to be blood relative. I get, well, maybe. Which of the following examinees may a VE not administer an exam? So we can't administer or certify an exam by fraudulent means for monetary or other consideration. If a VE is caught doing that, then they revoke his VE license, or station license, not just his VE certification. Yeah, they think that's serious.
You get it back after the year or two.
I don't know. I've never heard of that either, but I suspect it's happened. What may be the penalty for a VE who fraudulently administers or certifies an examination? Besides with 3, I don't know how you could ever do it. And if somebody's cheating, you have to terminate the exam. What should a VE do if the candidate fails to comply with the examiner's instructions during an amateur operator license examination? I kind of wonder what Gary would do if he catches you writing on the book, the exam book.
I wouldn't.
That might qualify.
Yeah. You might be upset. You have to. Because I don't use it.
Reimbursement. Like I said, you can't accept payment for doing the tests, but you can keep a portion of the money for processing fees. And when you fill out I forgot what that form is, but there's one we have to fill out that says how many people took which exam, passed, failed, how much money was collected, how much money we kept.
Law, somebody, I guess, covers those fees. Remember Gary saying something, he fed access in 610.
Yeah, no, he just does it over the internet. Most of them do now. Don't have to mail it. The ARL, I think, still wants you to mail a copy, but normally get uploaded over the internet. That's why you can get your, well, now, like for a technician, you get your notice from the FCC that you owe money. And you might get that on the following Monday.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where used to, you had to wait until they actually got the paperwork and all that. Of course, that was before you had to pay too. Yeah.
Does the ARRL still have a mountain for file cabinets?
I don't know, but they're getting a lot better. They process them pretty fast now, except when they've been hacked. And there's been, I know at least 3 incidents where things got hung up for a week or 2 without being processed. Worse was the VE accreditation. I think it took June. It was a couple months before she got hers. Not sure what was going on, but it was back when they were having a lot of issues. They'd been hacked, and they didn't call it that. They'd been disrupted. And some of the stuff still isn't working. I know we're not getting credit for some of the past classes. They just went into the black hole. Well, they claimed it was on another site, so they didn't lose data. I don't know. For which types of out-of-pocket expenses do the Part 97 rules state that VEs and VECs may be reimbursed? Alpha. Question pools. One of the main requirements is there has to be 10 times the number of questions required for an exam. So in the case of tech in general with 35 questions, you have to have a minimum of 350 pool questions. And they tend to go over that, probably average, I'd say 12 or more per group. Some groups went up to 15 and 16 questions. Each of the question pools is published. You can go download it. If you want one, I can send you a copy. The actual questions in the pool come from VEs. So if you're an extra, you can submit a question for the extra exam. May or may, I don't know what the process is on how they determine which questions to use, but you can submit one. If you're a general, you can submit one for the general. I assume you can also submit one if you're an extra. So who is tasked by Part 97 with maintaining the pools of questions for all U.S. amateur license examinations? Let's see. When you apply, you file what's called a 605, which is the application for amateur radio license. And that has to be signed by or certified by 3 VEs. And whether or not you passed, what license you got, it's set up so it'll handle all 3 elements. So you could, take them one at a time with the same session. And some people have done that. In fact, we had a guy at a Laurel session, young kid, 20s, came in, took the technician, 100%, took the general, 100%, took the extra, 100%. So basically the VEs are certifying that you've, met all the conditions and you didn't cheat and you passed the test, and it specifies what class of license you qualified for. At the end of the exam, that along with the actual answer sheet and any other paperwork has to be submitted to the VEC, whichever group that belongs to. And now, most of the time, that's done over the internet. So it's set up where it's, and I think now the FCC is processing. They look at what's in the inbox once an hour. So that's much faster than it used to be. What must the VE team do if an examinee scores a passing grade on all examination elements needed for an upgrade or a new license? No. Yeah. The FCC issues the license. We didn't say whether they passed or not.
You get that certificate.
Yeah, that's coming up. It's a CSCE. That's the other piece of paper.
That's what you walk away with that day.
You walk away with that, which is your proof that you passed. Good for 365 days. And one of the reasons was if there was some screw up, like the paperwork got lost in transit in the mail, back when they had to mail them, or you decided and you took your technician exam on Wednesday and you decided to go somewhere and take the general exam on Thursday and you hadn't got your license, your call sign yet, all you have to do is show the CSCE to prove that you passed the technician test so you can take the general test. That's the main thing for it, is proof in case something happens. And of course, it would also be proof if you let your license expire, and you were, say, an extra, if you go past the 2-year grace period, you have to go back and take the element 2 exam. If you can prove you were an extra, you get upgraded to an extra or general, whatever you had. But you have to either you have to have some proof of what your previous license was. And that's one of the things. So maybe you should hold on to it because it may or may not be in the database. Okay. Did we do this one? Yeah. I don't like the correct each test sheet. All you do is mark mark if it's wrong. Like I said, you have to get 74% or better. All 3 EVs have to initial it and then sign on the 605 form and sign the CSCE. That all gets submitted to the VEC. Oh, well. What must the VE team do with the application form if the examinee does not pass the exam? I don't know that we normally do this, but according to these rules, you're supposed to give the 605 form back to the examinee if they don't pass. I don't know that that always happens. Usually they don't want it. It's not really good for anything. So let's go with Bravo. Okay, a CSCE is the Certificate of Successful Completion of Exam. It's a little kind of half sheet form. And you get that if you pass. It's signed by the 3 VEs that graded the exam. Like I said, it's good for 365 days as proof that you passed whatever it says, technician, general, whatever. How long is the CSCE valid? Okay, if you take the general exam and pass, if you want to operate before you get your before you show up in the FCC database that you're now a general, you can operate as a general by using a /AG after your call sign. Because you already have a call sign, you were a technician. The same thing for extra. You can operate as an extra by using a /E after your call sign before it shows up in the database.
/E or /8?
Maybe it's AE.
Yeah. Acting general.
Yeah, AE, acting. Right. Normally, you show up in the database now within a couple days. Unless there's a problem with the money, but you don't have to pay for an upgrade yet. You have to pay for a new license. You have to pay for a vanity license, vanity call sign. Whoops.
When you complete the CSC or an extra that gets submitted, do they issue a new call sign or do you just?
No. No, the only way you get a new call sign is, I forget what the form is. It's something like a 605, but there's one where you can request a different call sign. Well, okay. Yeah, right. I was going to say, but there are extra call signs. It's a 1x2 or a 2x1.
Yeah.
Right. and they're hard to find.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be vanity call, that's a whole separate thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, once you have a call sign to change it, it's essentially a vanity, whether it's vanity or purposes or not. I think some people I've heard get a 1x2 or a 2x1 if they do a lot of CW contesting because it's shorter.
Yeah, that's right.
There's a calculator online too. That's a good point. If you plan to do, or you already do a lot of CW, there's a calculator online that you put in your line and it'll tell you what your dits and dows and weight is. Try to keep that as low as possible.
Yeah.
And yeah, when I went and got paid for XLG, I really did not plan on doing
CW.
And it's heavier than it looks, so we
Yeah.
start
Yeah.
counting out the dits and dots.
Wow.
Okay, on which of the following band segments may you operate if you are a technician and have a CSCE for a general class license? Yeah, it doesn't do the slash, but yeah. Until an upgrade to general class is shown in the FCC database, when must the technician licensee identify with AG after their call sign? Let's go with alpha. An expired license, your license is good for 10 years. After that, there's a 2-year grace period. In the 2-year grace period, you're not allowed to operate. After the 2-year grace period, your license expires. So in order to get it reinstated, you have to take basically the technician exam, the element 2 exam, and pass it. And then you can get restored to whatever license class you had prior to that. And that's also going to cost you $35 because it's essentially a new license, I think. So who may receive partial credit for the elements represented by an expired amateur radio license? Yeah, it's almost the longest one. What is required to obtain a new general class license after a previously held license has expired and the 2-year grace period has passed? Go pass the test again.
That's what I did.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I could have got, but it's like. It looked, you know, I have to say, I couldn't see one being easier than that.
Okay, so talk about what a VEC was, what the qualifications are for VECs and for VEs. You have to be 18 years old. I don't quite understand why.
This is a legal age or where.
Because it's a contract, you can legally enter into the
Yeah,
contract.
it's not more.
Yeah, maybe because you are signing stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe that's it. Because your signature is there on lots of pieces of paper. You have to have a minimum of 3 VEs to administer an exam. You can do it with only 3. Usually we have anywhere from 4 to 10. Usually have a lot at Laurel. But then Laurel, we've had over 20 examinees at a time. So it takes a couple people just to shuffle, exams and stuff back and forth. Generals can only administer technician. Extras can do all of them. VEs explain the rules, monitor the exam. Can't do an exam, have to recuse themselves if it's a relative. Have to terminate the exam if somebody fails to comply with instructions. That sounds to me like it's more than just cheating. And if a VE is doing something wrong, they can lose their station license and operator license. And I assume their VE accreditation, although it doesn't say that. But then you kind of have to have a license in order to be a VE.
You lose that little character thing.
Yeah. There's potentially some reimbursement for processing. VEs are accredited by a AVEC. You can have more than one accreditation. The VECs maintain the question pools, and they update the question pools every 4 years, and they're staggered. So they just did the extra pool in 24. So it's good until 28.
Yeah.
The general was done in 23, so it's good until 27. So we got about 2 years where everything's stable, and then they change them. And I got to go update slides.
It's not the whole question, they just some of them have answered out of 600, say, correct.
Well, on the last extra, there weren't many questions that actually changed. There were a few new ones, but probably 80% of the questions they rewrote.
Oh,
It's the same question, but in a lot of cases they kind of flipped it around. Where instead of here this question, this answer is kind of like this answer, this question type of deal. It was really, but it was the same thing. They just,
Which can make it more confusing too.
yeah. So that you don't memorize the,
yeah. I guess in this sense.
and of course they, in a lot of cases, they change the wrong answers around, different wrong answers.
I guess the question turns out bad and we fix that.
Yeah. And they, they'll delete a couple, and usually they put it out. I think the first issue is usually around January, February, something like that. And they kind of like get comments, and then it's not final till 1st of July. So you'll see some changes to the question pool in that time period. Your CSCE is your proof that you passed the test. When you walk out of the room, that's the only thing you get. You get the top copy. And you can operate, I need to change that, the AE. You can operate as a general extra immediately by using the /AG or AE after your call sign. If your license expires, you have to retake the technician test. You can get credit for a previous license. So,